Hello and welcome to another episode of the People of Payments podcast. Today we're diving into the world of fintech innovation with an incredible client of mine, James Camilleri, co-founder and CEO of Fyorin. James brings with him a wealth of experience across the fintech and e-commerce sectors, where he has been instrumental in scaling startup and high growth companies across Europe, Southeast Asia, the USA, and of course here in the UK. Under his leadership, Fyorin has emerged as a key player in streamlining and enhancing financial operations for digital businesses globally, helping them to navigate the complexities of international payments and currency management. James, today I know we're going to dive into the innovation around Fyorin, dive into your kind of career and your journey. So I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. And how are things on your side currently?
Thanks, Nathan, for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. Things are good, so can't complain.
Fantastic, and a pleasure to have you on the podcast. So thanks very much. What was it that kind of initially brought you into the fintech and the payment space? And what would you say is the biggest influences you've had at the earlier stage of your journey?
Yeah, so I bumped into fintech. I would say I was not expecting it, right? So my background is technology, right? So I used to be a software engineer, moved more into the commercial aspect, and I was working for a software technology company, and then at one point I saw this advert, with a financial institution. I said, why not? It looks interesting. Back then things were still fintech was even not a thing. But I think what really then draws me to it is fintech is very fast paced, right? So the world of payments is very fast paced. There's a lot of technology being involved, right? At the end of the day, it's all about the technology. And I think that is something which is very much that captivated me, there, right? So, if you look at any business in the world, whether it's online, whether it's offline, somehow you're making use of payments,
Absolutely.
right? So whether you are paying with a bank transfer, by a card, you're accepting payments. So somehow, somewhere along the line, there's payment. I think that's what makes it very interesting. That was also makes it challenging. At the same time, it also leaves a lot of opportunities for innovation, right? So, and then in the early days, you asked me what's really sort of what was my biggest influences, and I think my biggest influence is I always work for companies that are operating internationally. So for me, I always sort of saw what can be done at the bigger picture side of things. And I think when you into a vertical payments, where payments essentially it's a global business, right? I think this is something that really excited me, and of course move forward into this career into this area.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, and you mentioned there, of course, the I guess the industry itself and the space that you was in as being an influencer. Were there any individuals specifically that you kind of worked closely with that was either a mentor or somebody that was able to guide you in this space that was also influencing your kind of growth and progression?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough that I always worked with people around me that were always I looked up to, right? So I think I was lucky both when I was working from a technology perspective, but also on the commercial side of things, where I learned a number of things, learned the ropes there. So I think that also that helped me a lot to develop myself more as a person, but also in terms of career wise. But they were various people, right? So that helped me through that journey.
Fantastic. All right, nice. And I always like to have an opportunity for people to self-reflect as well on these podcasts, right? Because I think everyone, as you mentioned, is so fast-paced in this industry and so much going on that people sometimes don't always have the opportunity to do that. So if you were to look back over your journey, I guess on the run-up to founding Fyorin, not as you found it, but beforehand, was there a pivotal moment within that time frame where you really got some inspiration around starting your own business, because it's a big leap of faith to take from, working for some great companies, I'm sure being paid very handsomely for the work you're doing, to launching a business. So what was it that inspired you to take that leap?
It's a very good question. So I think that working with companies that are operating cross border, you tend to face a number of things, right? And of course, with payments being one of them, is the ability to send and receive money globally across different currencies is
Yep.
hard, right? So moving money is essentially very hard, and especially for businesses that nowadays everyone is by nature you need to operate cross border, right? So there are no borders, just literally horizons. So having that ability to send and receive money swiftly, friction, and there's a level remove all the friction in the process is very very hard, right? So when I was working with uh, these international businesses from an e-commerce perspective, I experienced this firsthand that the challenges of sending and receiving money, right? And I think when you reflect back, when you zoom out, you say like, but okay, all the businesses are online. The GDP of the e-commerce is actually growing and growing and growing, right? There must be a better way of how we can do this, right? And I think this is something that it's not just about Fyorin, but there's a number of innovative fintech companies that are trying to tackle this problem, because still I think there is still very hard to actually operate
Yep.
globally.
And I think from Fioren's perspective, I know firsthand with you guys that you got a very strong partnership mentality across the business, and I think that's also a sign, as you just mentioned, lots of different businesses in this space trying to tackle that similar problem. But actually, if you start to group all those together, you start to build out a solution, which is kind of why you've taken that approach. And I guess when you look back again on that start of the journey, taking something that is in this complex environment from a concept into reality, what were those initial steps that enabled you to do that? And what would you say was the biggest challenge in doing that as well at the earlier phase?
I think the initial step from taking something from concept to a reality, like everything is, you need to understand to whom you're actually selling to, or to whom you actually the solution is going to solve the problem that you're actually trying to tackle, right? So being close to that audience, right? So for example, we're selling to finance people. Being close to that audience, understanding what are their pain points, right? I think it was very crucial for us first and foremost, but I think it's crucial also for every other business, right? Because you can't think of something and then you try to fit it
Yep.
into a
Yep.
problem, right? So you need to have that level of feedback loop coming in from the customers or prospects, right? And actually go into the product development side of things, right? In terms of challenges, like every other startup, there were a number of challenges, and there will still be challenges, right? I think this is it's part and parcel that comes with,
Of
with with
course.
any type of business, not just with startups. But I think there is the element of, okay, I'm going to build up something, right? Um, is this something that my customers are going to trust me with, right? I think that building that level of trust is of course challenging, like every other business. And of course there's a level of funding, right? So funding, again, especially in the times that we are in, funding is always a challenge. But I think there are various ways of how we can actually bootstrap and scale companies, which luckily we have something that we went through with Fiorin, and again, this was based on sort of like client feedback and building in the right products, and of course having the right
Yep.
team, right? So we also have very strong um, co-founders also that also bring in the right mix, right, to actually develop a product to the market, which of course makes sense for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there about having the right team in place as well. And I know you're a very lean team structure as a business, right? So I think your headcount now is it 15, give or take? 14 people. So to achieve some of the bits that you've achieved with such a lean team, I mean, there were so many companies, certainly through the pandemic era, that were massively overhiring. They'd get some funding in, they'd overhire, and then of course they'd have to make redundancies. And I guess, having that more strategic approach to your growth and the team that you bring in, and making sure that the skills are balanced to others' weaknesses, I think that's been a really good success point of you guys to how you got to where you are today, as well as the leadership side. Now, we've already spoken about some of the challenges within the industry, and there's a ton of challenges in this industry, right? Which your platform as well as others will solve. Ultimately, you're streamlining the ability for global transactions in digital businesses, right? So, from your perspective, what is the core value proposition that Fyorin brings to the table that maybe your competitors do not, in your opinion? And how has that really been able to make an impact in solving the challenges for some of the customers that you have today? So from where they were to where they are now.
Yeah, I start from the last bit, right? So if you look at what is happening out there, if you look at finance teams, typically, you find out that they are interacting with 4 different financial institutions, sometimes even more, right? So they will be interacting with their local bank, probably a secondary bank, right? And then they will be operating with or interacting with an expense management platform, maybe someone that will handle the FX for them, maybe another fintech provider, right? Now, the challenge with that is that the more you do grow, right, you have your financial data being fragmented across different financial institutions. Now imagine this, like you're growing, you're scaling up the business, but in order for you as a finance team to actually handle all of that, you need to actually grow more the team, grow more your financial operations team. Why? Because interacting with all these different financial institutions, they're not connected with each other. So there's a lot of manual work being involved, right? There's a lot of manual work in doing payments, in the receivable, in reconciliation, and gathering all the data, and compliance, right? So you have to deal with different financial institution for compliance, etc. And that's where we can. You asked me about like what makes us stand out from the competition. What makes us stand out is that we have a technology platform where you as a business you can scale globally without the need to actually having to interact with different financial institutions separately, right? So we've built up a global platform of financial institutions where you can bank with multiple banks as if you're banking with one, right? So let's say you have you're operating in the UK. We provide you with local capabilities for the UK. But then if you want, let's say, to scale in the US, you don't have to go and source for the right banking partner. We give you localized financial products there, right? Whether it's banking, whether it's cards, lending, so on and so forth, right? So for you can everything is automated. So everything is automated. Everything is connected with your accounting platform. So you can automate your payables. You can automate your receivables. So what's the benefit of that? The benefit is that now we can help you to keep your costs down when it comes into financial operations because your business is growing, but then you don't need to actually increase your financial operations cost. Right? Essentially, we bring in more savings to you. So that's what makes us different, and we believe a lot in. You mentioned a lot, partnerships, right? So we're building up a global network of financial institutions where partnerships is something that we see very much key in what we do.
Absolutely, and I think with the ever-evolving landscape of this, and of course businesses that are scaling internationally so rapidly nowadays, this type of platform, especially from a data perspective as well. You mentioned around the fragmentation of data, and for any business to be able to gain insights across their financial operations and having to go to distributed locations to gather that and then input it manually and have to reformat it all, it's just a nightmare, right? And I think having that one pane view into everything regarding your financial operations is so powerful on top of all the other functionality that it brings.
Exactly, and I think you mentioned a very good point. So I mean, even when we talk to customers, right, or even to prospects, right, so there is a lot of things that are being done manually. Even, for example, making a payments, right? So typically, you go to the accounting platform and say, okay, I want to pay all these different, do all these payments, but then I go to the bank and actually make the payments. So there's a lot of manual work. So the fact that you can automate a bit, so you can go on the accounting platform and with one click of a button, hundreds of payments are actually sent out, right? And you approve, payments go out. So that in itself is already lowering a number of people. I mean, sometimes even especially with these bigger customers, you see that there are specific people that are only doing the type, right? So now you can actually, as a business, people can do different type of work, right? More strategic stuff. So I think this is something that brings in more and more value. Of course, there are other elements to it, but yeah, I think the word is, when we're talking about e-commerce and everything, the word is so competitive. So this is something that creating more efficiency internally is something that can give businesses more competitive edge.
Absolutely, without question, right? And look, over the time, undoubtedly, being in your position, you would have encountered various different challenges that you've had to come up against, giving you lots of different learning opportunities. I always like to focus on some of the failures because I think there's a lot of people out there that love to focus on the successes and everything that's going well for the business, but actually the lessons are in when you fail, right? And something doesn't go quite right and how you adapt to that. So is there a specific example of a failure that you've had within this journey and the lessons that you've been able to learn from that specific failure?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of failures, there will always be failures, right? So, but if we have to focus a bit on the lessons learned, and this is something that I touched upon earlier, is understanding more and more the customers, right? So, building a product that really solves a pain point, right? Sometimes when I meet a number of entrepreneurs where you're trying to build up something, but in reality, you don't really have a product market fit for it, right? Or you have an idea that this is going to solve this problem, but in reality, customers doesn't really want that type of product, right? They want something different, right? So I think for us, what's something that we keep on learning every day is how important it is to speak with customers, develop product with the customers, and this is what we've been doing essentially from day one. And I think this was one of our success factors, where we speak with customers, understand what we are doing, how they are doing certain things, what do they think about how if things have to change. Because let's not forget that yes, you can bring in innovation, but at the end of the day, people need to be willing to change, right? So I think understanding that and also like the different type of cultures that you're actually interacting with, different cultures in different regions, or even in the same audiences that you're actually targeting it. So this is, I think, a lesson that we're continuously learning, right? And I think it's very important.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess when you look at that customer feedback piece and working closely with the customers, there are different ways of doing that, right? So, a lot of times it's a case of getting demos out to customers, getting their feedback from there. Sometimes it's kind of learning whilst they're actually adapting the platform across the business. What have you found has been the best approach to being able to, I guess, balance the need of your customers and gathering that feedback, but also balancing the needs of the business, your product roadmap, and the prioritization around that?
Yes, this is also another point, because sometimes you can get lost or you can get carried away, right? The business wants to go in one direction, but customers are pushing you in another direction, right? So it's a very important to always have that balance in mind, right? So always look at what the data is telling you, right? So how your existing customers are actually using the product. What is the data telling you? Where the business wants to go. So new things, right? And try to balance them out and merging them together. Getting in that feedback, especially if you're going into different verticals, getting in that feedback early on will help you actually also to achieve what you would like to achieve as a business, but not divert too much from what the customers really want, right? That's why it's a continuous journey, right? That you have to go to how to. But to answer your question, it's a mix of a number of things. It's a mix of what is your existing data. It's a mix of where you want to go. It's a mix of what the customers are actually doing today, how things can improve. Maybe the customers are doing certain things today because they don't know any other better way, right? So sometimes you have to explain how things can actually change, and most importantly, how this new things is going to impact them, right? Because yes, you can give a product which has all the frills, etc. But if this is going to add more work to them, or it's not going to make their life much more easier, then people are not going to use it.
So it's very much a consultative approach, right? So it's
very much of a consultative approach.
Educating your clients the best way to get value out of it as you kind of go. Nice. Okay. And you mentioned earlier around culture, right? Which also brings us on really nicely to the next question. And this is coming slightly outside field compared to the conversation so far, but more from a business perspective, because for any startup, culture is a really vital piece of the puzzle to get right in the business for multiple different reasons. It kind of sets the groundwork for how your business is going to grow and the foundation of the team that you have around you. It's going to set the ability to be able to attract and retain talent in the future. And this is a topic, of course, being in recruitment, I'm always talking about. And what I'm keen to understand is how did you go about, I guess, defining the culture that you wanted to create within Fyorin? And then, of course, because you're a remote first business, how have you been able to execute and ensuring that's been maintained as you continue to grow the business?
Yes. So from our side, so we do have an office where, but also we have some employees that are working remotely. I think in the early stages, especially when it comes into startups, there is a lot of influence coming in from the founders, of course, right? In terms of how they think about certain things, how they approach certain things, right? I mean, from our side, we have the approach of we're very much innovative, but also we also apply what I mentioned earlier is that we also listen to things, right? So in terms of culture, from our side, we want that everyone is involved in actually, or feel that they are involved in the success of the company, right? So I think this is something which is very, very important, because if in order for you to build a successful startup, right, it's not just about one person, but it's about a team, right? And being part of the team and giving input about certain things or etc., it will always help to improve. It will always help to improve things. So having that cultural mindset, right? So again, we're building something which is innovative, right? But to build something innovative, you should not live in a box, right? You need to, be very much open, right? And I think this is something that we apply also at Fyorin, where everyone have their or contribute to the way we do things.
And I guess that's the important piece, right? Is making sure that people in the business are aware that, I guess in some ways it's okay that if you try something new and it doesn't work out, but you identify that quickly, it's okay to have those failures, because again, like we've mentioned before, that's the way you learn and kind of evolve and optimize. And I guess there's some companies out there that don't necessarily kind of give that safe space for that to happen, or give the feeling that it's a safe space for that to happen. And I think that's very different to you guys, right? It's very much, let's try everything new that we can, and let's think outside the box.
Yes, correct. And it's also about the communication, right? In some cases, as a startup, you want to say like, okay, we are going to take a risk. Yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to experiment with this, right? Because we feel that we can get more customers by doing that, or this and that, right? So it's all about communication. Not everything that's that we do works, right? But as you said, it's about how you deal with it, how quickly you can move from one thing to another, right? If something is not working, right? And again, it's continuous communication.
Fantastic, nice. All right, well look, this is the People of Payments podcast after all. So I'm going to dive into the future, right? So when you look at your predictions and where you see the trends are happening and the market moving, if you were to have a crystal ball and you could see 5 years into the future, what are you predicting for this industry, and what are you seeing?
I would love to have a crystal ball to see exactly what's the future like. I think what we are seeing is that the world is getting smaller and smaller, right? So and when it comes into the payment side of things, having that level of connectivity, instant connectivity, moving money very very fast, irrelevant of where I'm doing business, I think it's something very important. I mean, at the end of the day, if you are a finance person, right, you want to pay and get paid quickly, right? And you don't have to go into understanding how payments essentially work, right? Because time is money, right? You want to move very fast. And I think the fintech industry is slow, more and more, right, going into that direction. Of course, it's always been, but I think this is something that has become more and more important. And again, with all the innovations coming up, I think the world is becoming a smaller place. So having that platform where you can actually help you to operate globally is becoming more and more importantly.
And I guess it leads itself back into one of the hot topics right now in the industry, which is financial inclusivity, and giving people access to these types of platforms allows them to start trading globally and expand internationally. And I think everybody's talking about that, whether it's with open banking and the kind of stuff that's doing, whether it's cross-border payments and the world that's doing, it's all driving forward to that financial inclusivity, right?
Correct. I mean, it's across the board, right? Whether you're offering payments to consumers, whether you're offering payments to businesses, as I said, and the importance of inclusivity is because the world is getting smaller, right? There's a lot of drive in actually even more monitoring, right? So more KYC, KYB monitoring, right? And again, this is something that you bring in a lot of people into the ecosystem.
Fantastic. Nice. All right. And then finally, James, for anybody that's listening to this who are potentially in that mindset that you were before you started Fyorin, thinking, okay, is now the time to make the leap and launch their own business and kind of scale it out. As somebody who's been on that journey, what advice would you give to people that are in that frame of mind at the moment? And specifically when we're talking about coming into a very competitive industry, which is fintech?
So first and foremost, if you have an idea, just go for it. But on the other hand, start small, right? I think it can be very overwhelming, right? What you would like to achieve, right? But the most important thing is that you start small, get customer feedback, and then start to scale up. Because when you start small, it could be that don't try to build, a big thing and before you actually really launched, right? So start small and then scale up. And I think that is something that would be to save you time, resources, and also energy.
Amazing, fantastic. Well, look, James, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And look, we're going to keep in touch. We work with you guys anyway, and it's been a pleasure to work with you and continue to do so. And looking forward to seeing Fyorin on its journey of scale and success.